The air pressure changed before I even heard footsteps, and I knew, without looking up, that something big had just decided to sit next to me. I did not move. I kept my eyes on the small, glowing slate in my hands, though the words on the screen had stopped making sense the moment that shift in the air reached me. My name is Nora Whitmore, and by that point in my life, I had learned one very important rule about traveling among the compact species. When something enters your space, and the whole cabin goes quiet around you, you do not look up first, you wait. The shuttle from Terra Station to the Caldronex Embassy was full that day, every seat taken by ambassadors, translators, and armed escorts from a dozen different worlds. Yet out of all those seats, the massive gray shape that had just lowered itself across the aisle had chosen the one closest to me. I felt her eyes on the side of my face before she said a single word. "You are very still," she said. Her voice came out low and rough, like stone grinding against stone. Most things on this shuttle are not still when I sit near them. I finally looked up. She was Ashkarn, one of the tallest predator species in the compact, with gray-plated skin, a long neck, and black eyes that seemed to measure everything they touched. Her name tag, pinned near her shoulder, read Threxa. I had heard of the Ashkarn before. Hunters, trackers, a species built for chasing things across open ground until those things could not run anymore. "I'm just reading," I said, keeping my voice calm, even though my heart had picked up its pace the second she sat down. "No," Threxa said, tilting her head. "You are calm the way still water is calm. There is something underneath it." I had heard some version of this sentence before, more times than I could count. It happened first when I was working on a trade station near the edge of human territory, when a Vredal scent tracker sat across from me in a waiting room and would not stop staring. It happened again on Caldrus Prime, when a noble from the Osmi lineage cornered me after a public event, sniffing the air like he was trying to solve a puzzle. And now it was happening a third time, on a shuttle full of armed guards who were supposed to be far more interesting than a quiet human woman in the back row. "Maybe I'm just tired," I said. "Maybe," Threxa answered, though her tone made it clear she did not believe that for a second. She leaned back into her seat, unbothered, patient in a way that only something with no natural predators of its own could be. Ashkarn hunt across long distances, in packs, on open ground. Our eyes are built to notice one very specific thing: the single animal in the herd that does not run. Every other animal runs because it fears what is chasing it. The one that does not run has either already given up, or it has already decided that fear is not the correct response. That is the one we watch closely. That is the one that gets careless hunters killed. I closed the slate in my hands, giving up on pretending to read. "You think I've already decided something." "I know you have," she said. "I want to understand what." Around us, the cabin noise had dropped just slightly, the kind of quiet that happens when several very dangerous passengers all decide, without speaking to each other, to listen closely to the same conversation. I could feel the attention pressing against me from every direction, though nobody turned their head. I thought about giving her a polite answer and turning back to my slate. That would have been the easy way out. But I had learned something else during my years traveling among predator species, something that mattered more than politeness. Predators can smell a nervous lie hiding behind a calm face. What throws them off completely is a calm truth that does not need to hide behind anything at all. "You're reading it right," I told her. "I'm not sitting here because I'm brave. I'm not sitting here because I've made peace with anything happening to me today. I'm sitting here because a long time ago, I worked out what happens when someone my size decides they are done being afraid, and the answer turned out to be simple. Nothing happens. I just keep going." Threxa's head turned fully toward me now, her long neck rotating in that unsettling, deliberate way that human necks were never built to move. "Explain that." "Your species is built to chase," I said. "Long strides, strong lungs, more endurance than almost anything you hunt. It's a brilliant design, because nearly every creature you've ever chased has a limit, a point where the body simply refuses to keep moving, no matter how afraid the mind still is. That limit protects most animals. It tells them when to stop before they hurt themselves permanently. Humans don't reliably have that limit." "Every living thing has limits," Threxa said. "We have limits too," I said. We get tired, we get scared. We feel pain exactly the way anything else does. The difference is that we don't always listen to the switch that's supposed to make us stop. Somewhere far back in our history, on a world with worse dangers than most people realize, staying in motion longer than the thing chasing us turned out to keep us alive more often than stopping did. That instinct never really left us. It just changed shape. It's why our athletes finish races on injuries that should have stopped them. It's why our workers keep going long after exhaustion should have taken over. We are built, at some very basic level, to keep moving after the part that's supposed to make us quit has already failed. For a long moment, Threxa said nothing. Her claws, which had been tapping quietly against the armrest, went still. "That does not make you dangerous to me," she said finally. "One human, unarmed, sitting in a chair. I could end this conversation in a few seconds, and both of us understand that." "You could," I agreed. "But that's not actually what's bothering you, is it? It's not the 4 seconds. It's the math. If I don't stop when I get tired, or scared, or hurt, then a hunt against something like me doesn't end when I run out of energy. It ends when one of us physically cannot move anymore. And your entire hunting strategy, going back further than either of our species can properly measure, depends on wearing down the other side first." Threxa's eyes narrowed slightly, though not in anger. It looked more like she was doing careful, uncomfortable arithmetic somewhere behind them. "There is an old word," she said slowly, "in early Ashkarn hunting teachings. We do not use it much anymore, because the last kind of creature that word described disappeared from our homeworld a very long time ago. Not because we finished hunting all of them, but because the packs that went after them stopped returning home. Eventually, the teaching that survived was simple. Do not." "What does the word actually mean?" I asked. "There is no clean translation," she said. "The closest one would be something like, the thing you regret finding." I let that sit in the air for a moment, before I picked my slate back up and opened it again. Not because I had stopped paying attention, but because I had learned that moving on, calmly, without drama, told the room something louder than any argument could. It said the conversation was finished on my terms, not because I was afraid of where it might go next. Threxa did not press further. She sat quietly beside me for the rest of the ride, and I could feel her running the numbers again and again behind those dark eyes, trying to fit what I had just told her into everything her species had ever believed about small, soft, unarmed creatures. When the shuttle finally reached the embassy dock, she rose to her feet, towering over the seat she had just left. I expected a short nod, the kind of polite gesture predators give something they have decided is not worth the trouble. Instead, she paused in the narrow aisle, looking down at me with an expression I did not fully have a word for. Something between respect and careful distance, the kind of look you give a wire you have just learned might still be carrying current. "The other hunting species in the compact," she said. "The Vrail, the Osmi lineages, the Kaldronex war clans. They have all sent similar reports about your kind. Over the years we have shared this territory. Different words, same shape underneath them." "I know," I said. "My pack elder told me something before I took this posting," Threxa said. "She told me, do not hunt the quiet ones. Learn to sit near them instead, and be grateful that so far, they have decided we are not worth the trouble of finishing." She left before I could think of anything to say back, which was probably the right choice on her part, because I did not have an answer that would not have sounded like a threat, and I never wanted any part of this to be about threats. That was always the hardest part for predator species to understand about us. We were not coiled tight in the back rows of shuttles, waiting for a reason to strike. We were tired, and quiet, and, when it truly came down to it, simply unable to stop moving once we had decided to keep going. I finished the last few pages of my book before the shuttle doors even opened, the same as always. Nobody sat next to me by accident twice, not on that route, not after that day. Word of the conversation traveled faster than I expected. 2 weeks later, at a diplomatic gathering inside the embassy's main hall, a Kaldronex war leader named Draven approached me directly, instead of sending an aide first, which was, according to everyone around me, a mark of unusual respect. He was shorter than Threxa, but broader, with dark red plating across his shoulders, and a voice that carried even when he was speaking quietly. "You are the one Threxa spoke about," he said, without any greeting first. the still one from the shuttle. "I suppose I am," I said. "She said you told her something about your species that unsettled her enough to report it to her pack elder." Draven studied me the way someone studies a locked door, trying to guess what might be behind it. "I would like to hear it from you directly, not through a translated report." I told him the same thing I had told Threxa, though I shortened it, since the hall was loud, and neither of us had much time before other guests would want his attention. I explained the difference between fear stopping a creature and fear simply being felt without stopping anything. I explained how humans could keep moving long after the body's warning signs should have ended the effort. Draven listened without interrupting, which I later learned was rare for him. "Among my people," he said when I finished, "a hunt that does not end when the prey tires is considered a failed hunt, no matter how it eventually concludes. The cost is too high, too much is lost on both sides." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "You are saying your species does not know when a hunt against you should be considered finished." "I'm saying we don't always feel that line the way other species do," I said. "It doesn't mean we're stronger. It doesn't mean we don't get hurt just as easily as anything else. It just means the part of us that's supposed to say stop sometimes stays quiet a lot longer than it should." Draven was silent for a moment, watching the crowded hall around us, all those different species moving between conversations, unaware of the exchange happening quietly near the edge of the room. "That is a strange kind of danger," he said finally. "Not strength, not speed, simply refusing to end." "I've heard it called worse things," I said. "I imagine you have," Draven said, and for the first time, something that might have been amusement crossed his features. "I will pass this along to my war clan, though I doubt it will change much. We do not hunt your kind, Nora Whitmore. We have not for a long time, but it helps to understand why." He left soon after, called away by another guest, and I stood there for a while longer, thinking about how strange it was that a simple habit of mine, sitting quietly in the back row and reading instead of performing nervousness for an audience, had somehow turned into a message being passed between entire species. It was not until several months later, aboard a transport heading toward the outer trade routes, that I met someone who challenged the idea directly, instead of simply studying it from a distance. His name was Corin Ashby, a human trade negotiator who had been assigned to the same route as me for a short stretch of contracts. He was talkative in a way I was not used to, and on our second shared trip, he brought up the shuttle story without me mentioning it first. "People talk about you like you did something clever," he said, settling into the seat across from me. "Like you tricked a bunch of aliens into being afraid of us." "I didn't trick anyone," I said. "I just answered a question honestly." "Sounds like the same thing to some people," Corin said, though not unkindly. "Doesn't it bother you, though, letting them believe humans are some kind of unstoppable threat? We get hurt. We get scared. We lose fights all the time. It's not exactly the full picture." It was a fair point, and I thought about it carefully before answering. "I never said we were unstoppable," I said. "I told them the truth, which is that we don't always stop when we should, not that we can't be stopped at all. Those are very different things. One is a strength, the other honestly is closer to a flaw." Corin frowned slightly, considering that. "A flaw that happens to make every predator in the compact a little more careful around us." "Sometimes flaws work out that way," I said. "Doesn't make them any less real." He did not have an easy answer for that, and the conversation moved on to lighter subjects soon after, trade routes, and delayed shipments, and complaints about embassy food. But I could tell the idea had settled into him the same way it had settled into Threxa and Draven, turning quietly behind his eyes, long after we had stopped talking about it directly. That was the strange part about the whole thing, the part I thought about often during long shuttle rides afterward. I had never set out to send any kind of message. I had never planned to become someone predator species studied and warned each other about. I had simply been a tired woman who preferred quiet seats and long books, someone who had learned early that panic rarely solved anything, and stillness usually did. Somewhere along the way, that quiet habit had been read as something else entirely by species built to notice exactly the kind of stillness I carried. Maybe that was the real lesson underneath all of it, the one I never managed to explain quite as clearly as I wanted to. Not to Threxa, not to Draven, not even to Corin. Strength does not always look like claws, or speed, or plated skin built to survive a fight. Sometimes it looks like someone who simply keeps going, quietly, past the point where most things would have already stopped. Predators built entire hunting strategies around waiting for that stopping point to arrive. When it never came, when the herd animal in the back row just kept turning pages instead of running, something in their instincts had no choice but to take notice. I still sit in the back seat, every single time I have the choice. Old habits, I suppose. But these days, more often than not, the seat next to me stays empty for the whole ride, and I have come to understand that the empty seat says just as much as any conversation ever could.